What's good, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the channel. I'm LotusAsakura, the one who knows best, and today I'm bringing you a pretty interesting video and a collaboration that I don't think most of you would have ever expected. If you follow him already, you might recognize him by the name that we have on screen, but today I'm joined by MajinObama. Now, what's interesting about this is that, well, for one, MajinObama lives in Japan. I live on the east coast of the US, and we're currently playing Tekken together right now, which, you know, it's not known for its netcode necessarily, but, you know, it could be worse, but what's good with you, man? You want to say what's up to the people for me?
Yeah, man. Dude, hey, thanks for pulling up, man. I've been watching your stuff for a minute, actually. I think really came on a lot of people's radar with DBFZ.
Yeah.
Before that, you were active with a lot of shit, I think. But I think if you watch people like Hook or, you know, just hang around the DBFZ circle and your name came up a little bit. So it's cool to have the opportunity to, like, you know, talk to you like this. Especially about something that, like, kind of like where we meet in the middle on, you know? Yeah,
and what's ironic about this is that we're on Tekken just because it seems like just a game that is like neutral ground for us right now. I mean, he's got a, you know, a Marduk over here that he's learning, and I'm just not that great of a Tekken player in the first place. But we're actually here kind of to discuss DBFZ a little bit, and I guess basically where a lot of the community is at with the game right now, but also why some of us should be a lot more grateful for the gift that we've been given with that game, because frankly, a lot of people are disappointed right now with the game. They feel like we're not getting the proper updates or communication and enough content, et cetera, et cetera. But the reality of it is that there's so many other games that would kill to have, you know, the feedback, the content, the updates, and longevity that Dragon Ball has had and probably will continue to have just off the Dragon Ball game or the Dragon Ball name alone. And I brought MajinObama onto the channel to talk about that just because he has a very different perspective. Like, he's played DBFZ. He's, you know, been, you know, an organizer for events and stuff. I used to watch a lot of Fighting Tuesday, and he was always there with DBFZ and Tekken and everything. And he's someone who's very much involved in the fighting game community, but I wouldn't call him a DBFZ player. So he has a very different perspective. It could probably speak a lot more on, you know, all the great things DBFZ has done for its players and why we should be more grateful of that. So if you want to feel free to jump in and just talk about some of those things, have at it.
Yeah, I mean, one thing to me though is like when you talk about these games, right? Something that you come around to, especially if you play a lot of different ones. Like I get the thing with DBFZ is, when it comes to fighting games in the past, like 10 years or so, or 15 years, we can even say, there's been like a few booms where certain games have come on, and there's been a huge surge of people who, for them, they got in through this game, but still, this experience is very new for them.
Right.
So, Street Fighter 4 was like that. You know, there was a lot of new people that got in with Street Fighter 4. Street Fighter 5 was like that as well. DBFZ, I think, is the third one that was like on that level. I would even say Strive probably after as well. So for that reason, I think sometimes when you have these kind of conversations about like the game trajectories or just like natural lifespan elements of the games or you know, things like that, I think sometimes that kind of goes over some people's heads is all I'm saying. You know, I think when you talk about like the content and where the game is right now with DBFZ, there's a lot of frustration, I think. And I'm gonna be honest with you, Lotus, like this isn't really kind of discussed in the English like Twitter sphere or whatever, but JP players aren't necessarily happy either out here with the game, you know, where it is. But there's a lot of reasons for that too. You know, even looking at the start of this game, because of the Dragon Ball IP presence, there are natural benefits to that the game got,
but it comes with some qualms and some cons as well. But it does come with some downsides. And if you play, you know, you played other like big IP titles that are you know, have to do with Japanese publisher rights holders and stuff like that, right? So you know maybe what that comes with. But I think for the average person, they don't really think about it too deeply, you know? Right.
So you got to remember, this game, when it launched, it did not have a tour. It almost felt like an accident and felt like they didn't expect it to be as successful as it was.
Yeah.
And it took time for some things that people wanted to see to really start, you know, for them to start putting boots on the ground and getting it going. In
their defense, though, I think even with the Dragon Ball name, especially Arxis, I don't think they could have ever expected the game to be nearly as successful or as popular as it was, because it felt like everyone, like anyone who's ever played a fighting game or heard of Dragon Ball was on that game when it first launched, and it was kind of insane, and I think it kind of exceeded everyone's expectations.
Lotus, you say that, man, but you know what's funny about that is I completely disagree. Is because
that's how it felt on my end. I think most people didn't stick with it, but it felt like, man, NRS players are playing it. I mean, a lot of Tekken players didn't play it.
No, not that part. What I'm saying is like the success being like unexpected.
Oh, okay.
So for years, those of us that played other like older art games, like Guilty Gears or Blaze Blues or Persona or whatever, we were constantly thinking to ourselves like, man, as soon as this company gets an IP like Dragon Ball, something where people are gonna be forced to pay attention to it or whatever, something that's massively popular just off of strength of the IP. We knew that shit was gonna be a success. Like we knew, we've been talking about it for years. So then, honestly, that's part of the reason why when that game came out, a lot of us were so excited. We're like, oh shit, it's finally happening.
So my first exposure experience with any Arc System game was honestly Rev 2. Was Guilty Gear Rev 2. So I was like and I had only even tried the game out for myself when DBFZ first got announced, like back in 2017. So I wasn't really familiar that in tune with the scene. Like I had heard of the games and I knew some of the names, but I wasn't that deeply invested into it. Like up to that point in fighting games, I really just played Tekken and like NRS stuff, and I knew about mostly that. Like obviously everyone knows Street Fighter, but I've never been a big Street Fighter guy and other games. But I'll believe you when you say it though, because I mean that's how everyone feels now. Where it's like now everyone wants their next game made by Arc System. Everyone wants another anime game made by Arc System. Everyone's like, yo, we could just get Arc System to make a game on One Piece or Bleach or Hunter x Hunter. Like everyone's favorite anime, they want a game made by them now. So I could definitely see it.
They're like mercenary status now.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think for a lot of people who have been playing their games before, like we knew that success was going to happen. Maybe not to that degree, right?
Right.
But we definitely were like, I remember that was a conversation point for a long time. It was, man, what happens when this company gets their hands on? Because you got to remember, like especially when Rev was out or like Xrd and like later versions of Blaze Blue, that's the time where like Marvel 3 is a really big deal still, and those kinds of games where they have inherent IP strength, So we're just like, man, wait until they finally get their hands on that. And yeah, I mean, to know, I mean, it did definitely happen that way. I think the game recently just crossed the 10 million sales mark. That's pretty good.
Did it? I know, because I know Tekken 7 did. Did DBFZ also pass? The last I checked, DBFZ was at 8 million. That was like the last milestone I remember them celebrating. But I mean, I'm sure it's even higher than that by now, because even that feels like it was
you might be
some time ago.
Right, but like it's definitely even 8 million is like really good.
Yeah, no, like like correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that makes it like Arc's biggest game ever by far. I think second now is actually Strive, right? That's like the biggest Guilty Gear game they've ever had at this point.
No, I think Strive is now their maybe it's Strive or DBFZ now. It's 1 and 2 now.
Gotcha.
I remember BB Tag was their number 1 up until Strive, I believe. Because DBFZ still kind of counts as Bandai too,
Yeah.
But I guess the reason why I bring that up is because even then, especially from a JP perspective, let me ask you this: when you play DBFZ, what system do you play on?
Mainly on my PS5 now. I used to play on PS4, but PlayStation. I swapped from my PS4 to PS5 in anticipation of that rollback update whenever it comes.
I see.
I play it on PC from time to time, but I hate it every time I do. I'm not gonna lie.
What about do you think that's the case for most people in North America, at least?
No, I'm actually the outlier. I'm the odd one out. Most people seem to prefer PC, and like I partially understand why, but I prefer console because for one, like console's a tournament standard anyway. But also like the PC port of DBZ is not without its own issues, and it's like known to like eat your inputs and stuff. And there's fixes and things you can do to like improve it and make it better. It's kind of a hassle. It's not once you get it set up. It's kind of a chore to do at first, in my opinion, anyway. But even with that, it's like it also just doesn't make a lot of sense to me for everyone to constantly train and practice on PC, and then you go to a tournament, you have to like readjust your timing because the difference in input delay is there, and it's just like I'd rather just play on console all the time. It's what I'm used to, and it's what I've been playing on the last 5 years. So.
Yeah, I can understand that. There's a few games like that where I think the community kind of like generally I think PC is probably the preferred platform now, but there's a few games that are especially depending on region where players might prefer console. Right. But the reason why I bring that up is because we were talking earlier where having the Dragon Ball name, that IP comes with certain benefits, right? Like you're going to get a certain level of attention that maybe another IP wouldn't. But it also comes with like some hardships just because of the way Shueisha and Toei can be. Yeah, so
and I think stuff like that is a big reason as to why. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff you know more about on that end than I do. But for example, one thing people are always asking for and always like demanding in Dragon Ball, and I understand why, is like, yo, we want more costumes, we want more stages. But Shueisha kind of operating the way that they do and like caring so much about like branding and how they present certain things, they're like, we don't really want Goku in all these different costumes. So that's not really a high priority of theirs, even though in a lot of our opinions and eyes, it's like, but why not? It would just print money. But that's just not their business model. That's not their MO. So it just is what it is, as far as I know.
Yeah. Stuff like that, you know, like I think for like the average consumer or player or whatever, shit like that is probably weird, right? Like it doesn't even make sense to you. But that's something about this is, you know, like it's gonna be hard for you to understand the mindset of a like 50-year-old Japanese person.
Right, right.
You know, and just like when you have that in mind, some of the stuff that doesn't make sense, it makes sense in that it doesn't make sense in a way. I say that to say that, like, just for an example, right? Did you know, a lot of people don't know this, did you know that you can in Japan, you cannot buy Dragon Ball FighterZ on PC?
I think I saw Goichi say that at some point, but I can't say that if you would have asked me whether or not you could, I would have known. But I know that it was very much not played out there. Because everyone just played on PS4.
It's not even sold out here.
I feel like I think I might have heard Goichi mention that at some point, or seen him put it on Twitter or something. But yeah, I'd be also willing to bet most people are not aware of that.
And just like think about how crazy that is. You know,
right,
just
right.
like legit, just think about it for a second. And it's like when you think about that and how there is a region in the world where they straight up won't even sell a version of the game for seemingly no reason. Like that doesn't even make sense.
I mean,
my point is, like,
do you know what the reasoning would be? But are they just that focused on wanting PlayStation and Sony to just be like it? Like,
I mean, your guess is as good as mine, dude. There's all kinds of like random reasonings for shit. I mean, you know that game, Judgment, or the Yakuza series?
Yeah,
it's called like Lost Judgment. They had a big issue with releasing the PC version of that game for a long time because the management companies of one of the guys in the game, they didn't want any of the cast members to have their likenesses on PC because they were afraid hackers would take their likeness and then make memes of them doing stupid shit. It's like random shit like that, you know, like
right.
you're not gonna be able to relate. That's just, first of all, like that old dude doesn't understand how the internet works either, because
right.
do that anyway. You know, but that's
right. It didn't help, but yeah,
you're not gonna be able to relate to like some of their logic because frankly, like there is no logic to follow there. But I guess I say that to say, like, the point is this game is in kind of a unique position even from jump, where there's red tape to it, and I don't have to explain that. You know, I think people have kind of maybe slowly figured that out, but like you have to realize that like there's red tape with this game that might not apply to Tekken, that might not apply to Street Fighter in the same way, that might not apply to some of these other games in the same way. So my thing is, like, and just like in real life, you know, the shit you got, you dial that up, you be hype about that shit, you dial that up. Shit that you don't got, it's okay to be, you know, upset about. But my thing is this, and this isn't like exclusive to like DBFZ talk or anything. It's not what, you can relate to this, right? It's not what you say. Sometimes it's how you say it.
For sure.
You get that?
Yeah.
So if you can have a legitimate complaint, or you can have something that, you know, is bugging you or whatever, but the way you express that sometimes is what really matters, and what is the difference between, you know, this shit being a constructive criticism or just like
just seeming like a spoiled brat.
Angry, you know?
Yeah. You know, and it's funny. I think that's a good chance to bring up, because I guess we haven't even kind of touched on how this conversation or this video came to be. So obviously you've seen a lot of discourse on Twitter from Dragon Ball FighterZ players, and I'm no exception to that. And it's funny that you see me now of all times, because I mean, I've been playing the game for 5 years. I've been a big proponent, and like, so it's constantly talking about how much I love the game and how I always supported everything like that. But MajinObama frankly caught me at the best time. I mean, as those of you on my channel know, I've been playing DBFZ. I haven't uploaded the game in like 2-3 weeks. I haven't streamed it in like 2 months. I mean, I've watched a couple of events, but I haven't been playing it for myself. And this doesn't just come from like my frustration with the game in terms of like on the development side, but you know, I'm just somebody who has been playing the game nonstop for thousands and thousands of hours for the last, you know, well, since 2018, so almost 5 years now. And I was just at a point where it's like, I wouldn't call it burnout per se, but I was just frustrated with obviously the current state of the game and the netcode, and just feeling like I need to take a break. And then for me personally, I know it was like when we had that show or whatever, and we did not, because I thought a release date for rollback was like the bare minimum, because I'm always one like, hey, keep your expectations low, man. I don't need everyone getting their hopes up and thinking we're gonna get this or that. Rollback's not coming out the day after. That's not gonna happen. But it felt like they essentially gave us nothing, and for me, that was like, all right, bro, I already been like frustrated with the game right now anyway, and like playing it less and feeling like I should probably take a break from it. And for me, that was a straw that broke the camel's back. And then MajinObama had caught wind of that. You know, he had some things to say. You know, just about the state of the game, and you know how, you know, some Dragon Ball FighterZ players are coming off really ungrateful. And despite how I felt or how I've been feeling and stepping away from the game, I would agree with that, because when you think about it, man, DBFZ is one of those games where you can boot it up pretty much any hour of the day, especially if you're in America, and you're gonna find plenty of people to play with. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to join a Discord to go find people. You don't have to worry about, oh, if I'm not on during this hour of the day, there's not gonna be anyone online, ranked or casual. You're gonna find players, and that in itself is a huge blessing. Not to mention that we've gotten several seasons, multiple world tours. I mean, Dragon Ball FighterZ has gotten a lot of stuff that a lot of other games have not gotten and would love to get. And it's been a blessing and a curse of the fighting community. But Dragon Ball FighterZ players should be very grateful and very blessed for everything that we've gotten up to this point, even if we aren't always getting what we think we quote unquote deserve or should get when we should get it. But again, that also comes down to some entitlement and whatnot. But yeah,
and the thing is, like, shit, I'll flip that on myself, bro. I've been frustrated as hell with some games too, man. Like I'll be saying some shit like that about games I love, mind you. You know, I'm definitely, if you go back on my Twitter, you could definitely find me doom posting about like Rev 1 buffs the chip or some shit like that. You know, like I'll be like, God, what are these motherfuckers doing?
Right, because I don't know how much of my own content you've consumed, right? But as I'm sure you're aware, in Dragon Ball FighterZ right now, the fusions are running everything in lab code. I actually like lab code. I actually think she's a sick character. I know she's horrible for the game, but I hate the fusions. I always have hated both Vegeta and Gogeta since they were released in the game, right? So for them to be like the two best characters in the game right now, and I hated them even when they were bad, I'm just like, this is the worst possible timeline for me.
And you know what? To be fair, they just had a world tour event in Japan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the questions that somebody had was like, man, why aren't that many people playing in Japan anymore? And I mean, there's a few answers for that too. It's like, first of all, because there aren't a lot of people, how can I say this? People in the past who might have been running events for it and pumping that shit are not running events for it anymore for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
And also, yeah, a lot of them have the same complaints as y'all do, but it's presented differently. You know, like there's mad people out here, bro. Out of the people that play, they're like, they hate the fusion meta, they hate lab, they hate like the all that shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I guess that's another thing too with it is, I remember telling Super Noon this when he came to the World Tour event in like the first year or second year of the game.
Mm.
But it's like, man, this game is giving a lot of people a lot of shit, you know, and like,
I mean,
bless people up in a good way.
I'm a prime example of that. Like, because
Exactly,
even though I was
right,
doing
like,
YouTube and Twitch a little bit before DBFZ, like Dragon Ball FighterZ is what kickstarted me and got me to where I am today. And I'm not saying
that to say like that's the reason for your success either, Lotus. Like, because like,
nah, for sure,
you know, your channel was doing pretty well before that, but like this game was a catalyst for you, right?
Nah, for sure. Like, and it's been a catalyst. It's been a catalyst for a lot of other people. Because like you look at somebody like someone like Lord Knight, right? Like he definitely got a big boom because he started playing Dragon Ball FighterZ. Now, obviously, Guilty Gear and other games have always been his main thing. Like, you know, with BlazBlue and Melty as well. And with Strive coming out, he took another leap. But you know, he's one of those people that definitely benefited greatly from Dragon Ball FighterZ. Even though Guilty Gear, Strive coming out and releasing is a prime example of like it didn't have to necessarily be Dragon Ball. You know, he's someone who would have probably succeeded eventually anyway, but it definitely helped. Shit.
So it's like when you take that into consideration, and that's not majority of people either. Actually, quick question before I get back to this: how much? So we're talking about the rollback patch, right? And that the DBFZ the Dragon Ball Battle Hour and stuff like that,
right?
How much of? Do you play NRS games by chance?
Very casually. Like I haven't touched Mortal Kombat 11 in over 2 years now, but when they first drop, I usually play them for a few months.
Did you play 10 at all?
Mortal Kombat X? Yeah, Mortal Kombat X was kind of the game that got me more invested into like the FGC and like watching tournaments and everything like that. Cause that was like, that was what showed me how far fighting games really went. Cause I started watching like more stuff on YouTube and like, you know, evos that I had missed and like keeping up with like the events and everything. And then seeing like Sonic Fox dominate that scene. I was like, yo, fighting games are way sicker than I already thought they were. And then leading into like Tekken 7 and then DBFZ is kind of like how I got my start with getting more invested in fighting, because I've always played them my whole life, like growing up, mashing buttons, you know, playing with the homies and stuff. But and like really seeing how going online and seeing how far things really went, I was like, yo, the ceiling goes so much higher than I ever knew.
So I bring that up to say this, like I'm not a nerd like Sajam or one of those guys where like I'll tell you like, oh, the implementation of this rollback is blah 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 blah. Like, I just fucking play.
You talk about like how when they implemented in MKX.
Yeah, there's a video on YouTube from the Game Developers Conference from when they implemented rollback into MKX. When I want to say it was MKX when it initially released, it had really bad netcode. But NRS invested in completely revamping it for the PC release, and basically they redid they had to redo everything. Right. And it's like I'm gonna tell you, like, Lo, you probably figured out I'm not that smart. Okay, I'm not that smart of a person, but even me, I can watch this video. It's from a GDC conference where the engineers behind that talk about the process of implementing rollback into the game.
Right.
Like what they had to do, what it cost, all that. And like NRS is, you know, they have access to like Warner Brothers war chest, right? Which is huge. When you watch that talk, it's something everyone should watch, in my opinion. Like,
I actually haven't seen it, so if you got a link for it, I would love to watch it. I might even like do a discussion on it myself for a reaction, or at least watch it on my stream with everyone.
Hey, I'll pass it to you after this, and I'm gonna tell you what, man. I'm gonna tell you right now, it is not super exciting. I'm not gonna lie.
Nah, that's fine. I mean, because even if it's not that exciting, I could at least watch it for myself and pass the information along, because I think that is information that a lot of people are lacking. Because like even myself, like I'd be lying if I said I didn't look at it. It's like, okay, MKX did it. I know they got the treasure trove that is Warner Bros. But like with the success of DBFZ, it's like I know it's got to cost a lot and it can't be easy, but it's been shown to be possible, and the game is wildly successful. So there's got to be an avenue to make it happen. So I'm just trying to figure out like what was stopping it in the past, and clearly they eventually did figure out a way, and I'm not sure how they managed to do it, but yeah, that'd be information I'd be glad to have, and I'd love to sit down and watch.
This talk is really good because it gives you an impression and an idea of just how much, not just resources and money, but the most important resource, time.
Right.
That shit takes. They had basically, I'm going off of memory, I haven't watched this video in a few years, but they basically had like 7 engineers working all the time just on implementing.
Right, it's not like you just go into the code, change a couple of lines, and then boom. It's like, no, you have to completely reinvent the online and like the netcode from the ground up. You know what I'm saying?
I mean the way this dude talks about it just sounds fucking brutal. Just like
conducting surgery on the game's skeleton.
Yeah, more or less, and that's from their perspective of an NRS, you know, with a Warner Brothers war chest to back it up. Not every company has access to that.
Right.
You know? Now, I'm not saying that maybe some companies don't have resources that they can commit to that, but you definitely get a sense for, depending on the level of expertise of the engineers or, you know, who's doing the shit, that shit can take a while, you know? Just for comparison's sake, I mean, right when Type Lumina released, Kamone, the French bread, one of the French bread heads, he said he was working on rollback for Uni, and it's been like a year and a half, and they haven't said shit since. For comparison, and the thing is, because of that company's size and stuff, I don't think a lot of people have that expectation. They know, damn, that shit. Yeah,
and kind of brutal. That's another thing too. It's like with the name of Dragon Ball, it's like, bro, y'all got the name of Dragon Ball behind it. Y'all gonna have to figure it out. You know what I'm saying? People's expectations are way higher because of, you know, the name that they're dealing with.
Yeah, for sure.
And even with Arcs, it's like being, I mean, I'd like to think that they've probably grown a lot over the last few years. It seems like they've pumped out so much stuff and have been so successful. But even in comparison to someone like NRS, I gotta imagine they're still a lot smaller.
Yeah, maybe. But I guess the other thing too is you mentioned, like, because it's Dragon Ball, there's a name associated to it, and that comes with expectations.
Right.
There's also the other side of that coin, where because you're talking about a move that requires joint operation from multiple companies at once, and these are bigger companies, you know, that comes with even more red tape. It's probably harder for them to get approvals and
because another thing is that a lot of that, like, it's not all in Arcs' hands. You know what I'm saying? Like Shueisha and Bandai Namco play just as large, if not larger, roles in the say so about what goes on. I think that's another thing that people don't get, because even something as simple as just like I understand people complaining and dooming on Twitter. Like, I'm guilty of doing it myself at times. But like what you'll never see me do is like at the English Bandai Namco Twitter account and be like, hey, y'all need to fix this shit, because like Romanova or whatever community manager that's behind that Twitter account ain't got nothing to do with the implementation of rollback netcode like getting sped up or like whether or not it gets approved. Like they can help make our voices be heard. That's their job as community managers, like relaying feedback and stuff. But that's really it. She's not the one, or they're not the one, whoever it may be, going directly to the headquarters of Bandai Namco and be like, hey, look, this is what they want. You better get on it.
I'm glad you said that too, because especially, to be honest with you, the fact that dude, I can remember for the longest, especially like playing art games, a community man. What the hell even is that? Like, what is a community man? The fact that y'all even have somebody that y'all can attach a name, like a face to, and a name to, and just hit them up. And obviously, you know that Romanov, like you said yourself, Romanov can't bust into the game code.
Right.
She can't remove lab code 21. She can't do anything. She can't. She's not gonna be able to fix the fusions, or it's not like that. But you have somebody that you can at least, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier too. Is like, it's not what you say, but it's how you say it. You make her job way easier. You make someone like that's job way easier when instead of relying on your 280 character rage tweet, right? Like, just put yourself in her shoes. If she's got to go to her boss, imagine she has to present like the English community feedback for whatever they did. And she just has like 280 character tweets of motherfuckers just saying the wildest shit about
just setting her threats and just talking about how awful everything is. And
it's probably a harder sell for her than like, and I get like not everybody has the resource to like go ham on this kind of thing. But what I'm saying is, this isn't just Dragon Ball Fighters. This is just everybody. We need to think of how can we take our feelings or what we think and be more constructive about it. So instead of this tweet where, I'm going to go off, if you play this character, blah, 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 why don't you make a video where you articulate your points and make an appeal to something?
Right.
That's a lot easier to present. That's a lot easier to talk about than I think like whatever, just like, sad boy doomer rage tweet. And the thing is like everybody's guilty of this to some degree, but that's okay. But it's like to move forward. Because the other thing too is we talked about how much red tape there is. You got to remember this game at this point. This game is like damn near 5 years old.
Right.
For a game that is you know how insane that is, dude. For a game that is 5 years old, and this is just like this is the perspective I'm coming from, man. Is I've played a lot of different games. There are not a lot of games that in year 5, let's just say like flat layer 1, in year 5 are getting as much as this game is.
I mean, yeah,
there's sound like much.
There's a lot of games at this point that just don't have as many people still this passionate still playing it. So that's like going back to what I said earlier. Just the fact that we can log on every day at any time of the day and find people to play with is a blessing in and of itself.
Yeah. I mean, sure. There's definitely some games that go by the wayside fast. I mean, there's games that have come out since then that have gone by the wayside fast.
Yeah. There are some that I enjoyed and some I got online to try to record.
Yeah, that's sad, right? Like,
yeah.
If it's one you enjoy, like then you understand, because that does happen straight up. And it's not to say that you should be satisfied. I'm not saying you should be satisfied with it. I'm saying basically, if I can make I don't like doing this because like when you use real world examples, I don't know, it gets weird. But what I'm saying is basically imagine you live in like a certain economic situation, right? And then the girl who lives in a gated community is like comes to school complaining about her faucet water was running too cold or some shit. It's like,
right.
But I'm looking at you in class like we don't even live on the same planet. Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
And the thing is, you have to, if there's stuff that you don't vibe with, yeah, you do have to speak up with. That's important. It's important to let them know. But again, it's how you do that is my thing. And I don't think just because of platforms with like Twitter and shit like that, so many people can see that don't know any better or aren't inundated into the scene like that.
Right.
I think it has the potential to reflect really badly and maybe even turn people away is my thing.
And that's something in the past that I've also tried to be very mindful of. And like, obviously as of late, like in the tweets that you saw from me, like specifically, like those are things that you normally don't see from me. Like everyone's going to have a day where like, man, fuck this character, right? You know what I'm saying? Or stuff like that. But as far as like showing myself uninstalling the game and that I'm that visibly frustrated or upset, like I normally would never even do that, because like people look at me as like one of the pillars of the community, whether I want to call myself that or not, or see it that way. I have a pretty large following and I predominantly make that content on that game. So, you know, if Lotus is even playing the game, well then we're really in trouble, you know what I mean? And like that's something that you take into account after the fact, and then you're just like, well, what's done is done now. But typically I'm the one trying to keep expectations tempered and, you know, usually speak on things in a better light and make sure that we are articulating ourselves in a, not even necessarily more professional, but just in a more constructive manner, because obviously we're all allowed to be upset or have things that we don't like. But there definitely is a better way to go about things and trying to make our voices heard and trying to enact change, because it's not necessarily that change is impossible, but just raging on Twitter at the wrong people is not going to make change happen.
Yeah, that's all I guess I'm trying to say too. Is, and then the other thing too is like, so the Dragon Ball Battle Hour, this is another like micro concept. Is not every, especially with an IP like Dragon Ball, right? So I actually worked on the Dragon Ball Battle Hour in I think a couple years ago, but basically that shit is not for us, bro.
Yeah. I mean, they're very clearly focused on the other games. But it is what it is, and you know, maybe I'm guilty myself of like doing what I never say and getting my expectations up too high, which I guess I did, because that was the first time I ever like watched an event and was like, wow, I'm like so disappointed, because from my perspective, I thought a release date, or at least even if we didn't get a release, I genuinely thought that we were like, I was pretty confident in that, and we didn't. But I even was hoping that they would say like, hey, we're still working on it, we're having some issues with this, or you know, it's still coming, guys, like don't worry, like we know you're all very excited. But like they didn't even say that much, and I guess that's the other side of, it's not what you say but necessarily how you say it, because it didn't feel like they really acknowledged it that much, and they kind of just like shrugged it off and just had like nothing to offer in regards to it. And for me, like I said, that was the straw that broke the camel's back, and I was like, all right, bro, I was feeling some type of way about the game anyway, I'm gonna just uninstall it for a bit and just not play, and you know, that for the betterment of, you know, maybe my own mental health, but but yeah, you know.
Yeah, I mean, from what I watched of the one this year, they had basically, like, my thing is this: them adding rollback to a 5-year-old game, like, who is that for? It's mostly for the people that are still playing,
right? And
then like average Dragon Ball fan, like they don't even know what rollback is. So they had a bit where the producer and Aqua and Nuki were talking about what that is and what that means. I saw them at least on the Japanese version. I might have been. I would think I was watching the JP version, and they talked about it. But she was basically just summarizing the announcement of them adding rollback.
Right.
And it's like, even though there aren't that many details, that's the reason why I suggested that video earlier. Is if they only just got clearance to the okay to add like retrofit rollback 3 or 4 months ago when they announced it then. And the thing is, we don't know. Maybe they've been working on it for like 6 to 8 months. We don't know.
And for me, I think that's another thing too, because it just feels like, you know, we're so in the dark. And like, again, maybe there are things that they just can or cannot talk about. I just think people like myself, and I very clearly, a lot of other people feel even stronger about it than I do, is like, we just want to hear something more than, I guess, what they said. And I guess maybe it was, I don't know if that's still like being entitlement and just expecting too much, or just wanting a little bit more transparency on that aspect. Because for me personally, right, like if they came on stage and be like, hey, we're still working on it, it's very hard, we only just began development on this like so and so time ago, and like we have to do this from scratch, I'd be like, I understand, for sure, word. But to not get that is kind of like, it almost feels like they didn't care. Like, and I know it's not the case, like obviously they have to care, right? But that doesn't change how it can make someone feel, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, and that's I don't think that's entitlement. I think, like, especially wanting more transparency, I think that's fine. It's just, you have to realize too, on the other side of that coin, that might not, like you said, that might not be possible.
Right.
And then you got to think about the negative repercussions too. Is like, okay, if she comes out and she says, okay guys, we're on month 10 of the timeline, everything's gonna be out by February, the rollback is coming. But then they hit a snag and it can't get approved, and it gets delayed till March or something. What do you think people's reaction to that is going to be?
It's very negative. I think that's also one of those things where, like, you can't please everybody anyway. So no matter what path you take, there's always going to be somebody who's upset. There's going to be people who care more than I do and people who care a lot less than I do. But yeah, I could definitely see that very easily, getting people upset. And it's like, you said it was coming here. Like, why is it not here yet? And it's like, all right, whatever.
Just from kind of like knowing people out here and like kind of how, I'm not claiming to like know how JP businessmen think, because that, like, you're not going to be able to. But I could see a logic line like that. basically. That wouldn't surprise me if that was their thought. Especially because, you know, like, I'm sure anything that the game does, it has to go through several lines of approval that most games would not have to deal with.
Right.
But I guess, like, my thing, man, is just like, dude, y'all, for Dragon Ball, you had, regardless of how you feel about how it was run or the tournaments or whatever like that, you know how crazy it is for a game that is 4 years old to have a world tour in a pandemic,
for sure,
where dozens of players are being flown across the world in a pandemic to like play. You know, even if it's just like for one weekend, you know, that event doesn't really do anything for the hordes of players that still log in every day, right? It's mostly just like, you know, for the top people. But even so, like, that's huge, man. That's something. A lot of games don't get that, bro. Like,
nah, for sure.
A lot of games don't get that shit, man. And I'm not saying you have to be satisfied with it, but I'm like, you got to look around a little bit too. Like, bro, these games aren't hitting like that to where that kind of shit is normal. That shit is very, you know, very big.
And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that it is Dragon Ball, and DBFZ being a game that introduced so many people to fighting games, and this is their first fighting game, whether it's like even casually or competitively. It's like they're not used. And to some degree, even I'm still not used. Cause like I said, I still consider myself relatively new to the FGC. Like, I've played fighting games my whole life, but you know, I'm learning more and more about how things work and obviously improving at games every day. But there's just so much that people haven't experienced or seen before. So it's like, it's hard, I guess, at times to wrap their head around. And then just certain things where like, they don't even make an attempt to wrap their head around it. Cause there's always going to be ignorant people regardless. But, oh shit.
Yeah. Especially like if you don't know any better, right? And
yeah.
And like, that's why I kind of soften too, is like, I always have to tell myself, for when it comes to Stride people, DBFZ people, SF5 people, for a lot of people, this is their first game like that. So they don't know how.
Yeah.
They don't know how like the trajectories go for these kinds of
You know, it kind of reminds me. I already brought it up now, so I don't want to keep it to myself. But do I want to name the person? Because I don't want to feel like I'm trying to put them on blast. But I mean, if y'all saw the tweet, y'all know who it is. But there's a top Guilty Gear player who made a tweet about Nagorda Yuki being like the most non-fighting game character of all time. And I'm like, all right, but no disrespect, because I have a lot of respect for this player, and I think that they're incredibly talented, and I love watching them compete and play. But Strive is literally their first fighting game ever. So to see them say something like that, it's like what would you know about the history of fighting games? Like, you haven't been there.
You're trying to get me in trouble, man. That's not my scene.
I'm not. But I'm just saying to say that that's especially prevalent in something like DBFZ, where people have these strong takes or opinions or feel a certain way about things with having no prior experience or exposure to a history of other games and how things have operated or how things work, and whether it comes to like the business side of things or the balance side of things. It's like I understand you feel the way that you feel, but there's so much information and experience and history that you're missing. So for you to have this like very uninformed opinion or take is understandable, but you also got to be open to learning and being given the information to understand why things are the way that they are.
Part of that too is just like, you know, like someone like Twitter, TikTok, whatever, dude. Like, that shit's like having a microphone. People
man, a lot of people just be talking just to be talking.
Like, or do you really think that you're just being hyperbolic, right? You're just like,
nah, for sure,
saying something really strong,
right? Because even the tweets that I'm referencing, like they might not even really feel that way, but they wrote it, which is why I can bring it up like now as an example. But that's another thing too, is like sometimes people just throw stuff out there just to be thrown out there just to get a reaction at times. So
Lotus, the other thing too, maybe they were net playing and somebody got in their ass real bad. Like,
it'd be like that. It'd be like that. The salt tweet is so easy to make.
That's what I'm saying, bro. You could definitely like go back in my Twitter history. I definitely was getting roasted by some dude playing Chip, and I was like, the people that play this character, they don't pay taxes. You know, I'm doing like, I'm talking about anything and everything.
Nah, like again, like I've always disliked the fusions way before they were like the best characters in the game. Like they just always annoyed me personally. And there's definitely time, especially like in a video, right? Because I be talking mad trash and I'd be cracking jokes. I was like, yeah, there's not a single Gogeta player out there who passed the 4th grade on the first try. You can't convince me otherwise. You know what I'm saying? Just random BS just to be talking. It's like I definitely get it.
Yeah, like they don't have high school diplomas, only GEDs.
Yeah, I remember I was fighting because again, I'm not a big Broly fan either, and you know there was a time in Dragon Ball where Broly was running everything. I was like, And I just know you work at Burger King. Like this just mad random. Like,
hey, hold on, man. Hold on. Burger, you got, bro, they be working hard at drive-thru.
It wasn't even about disrespecting people working at Burger King. Again, just the most random insult I came up with. It was like, yeah, this dude definitely work at Burger King. Just to be talking trash about it because he played Broly. Like, so no, I definitely get it for sure.
Damn, that hurt, bro. I used to work late night. I used to work drive-thru.
It's especially funny because like I don't know if you want to call it privileged or what, but a little insight about me. I've never had like a regular like retail job or anything like that. Like before I did content, I did photography, and then before that I was like in high school. So I never
bless.
I always hustled until basically I came into content creation. So I've always found a way to like support myself and make a living just doing like random things here and there until I started doing Twitch and YouTube full time. And on one hand I'm grateful for that, but on the other hand I know there's like a whole world I never experienced and stuff like that. So sometimes I'll be talking, I'm like, yeah, maybe I don't really know what I'm talking about with that. So I'm gonna just keep out of this one, but I'm gonna still crack my jokes every now and again.
I mean, you were talking about before you ever recorded, but like you talking about the FGC is broke and shit like that. I mean, it worked out for you pretty well.
Well, yeah, and that's
part of
why
that too is also you have a community of people. That's the other thing too, man.
Yeah.
Like people say shit like that, but I mean, like there's too many success stories or too many examples of people who just got like really blessed up or built communities that bless other people, just do really good shit.
Mm-hmm.
For me to like take something like that seriously is like that. I don't get it.
Yeah, and that's why when I saw that tweet, I was like, I don't even usually respond to stuff like that. It's not like I retweeted it or quote tweeted or replied or anything, but I felt the need to speak on it because I'm like, nah, this is something that like I can relate to and speak on, and I'm an example of this just not being true. And there's just so many other cases that show that. So that's why I had like LK and Sajin come on, who are also just prime examples of that. Because even though LK comes from competing and Sajin's competed in the past, but he's more known for his commentary. These are also people who found like a whole new lane through content creation and found a lot of success, and I mean, have built communities and made livings off of content. So it's like, yeah, like that just wasn't even true. But yeah, all that being said, this has already been a 43-minute record. It's so easy because like there's just so much to talk about. Like I don't know. I had a lot of people since we're referencing that video. I had a lot of people in those comments telling me, "Hey, yo, Lotus, you should just start your own podcast, man." And like easier said than done. When you get with somebody in a call like this, it feels so easy for me to just go on and ramble and just talk about so much. And then the more you talk, it's like just more things come up. But simultaneously, like coming up with the topics beforehand or getting people to show up on time and like arrange things is just so much harder on the back end than you might realize. Because even this video, like it would have been nice to get this out like a week sooner, truth be told. But like timing is just definitely just a thing.
There's a lot of events last weekend too. That's part of my work too. Is I stream some of the events out here.
Yeah.
So it's like when there's a Tekken World Tour event and an SNK event and this event, shit like that, all that's at the same time, that shit gets brutal. But the other thing too is you're like, man, maybe I should start. But you basically already did. Like this is a podcast.
I mean, yeah. I mean, with back-to-back, I guess episodes being 40 minutes long, and both of these easily could have been an hour long if I wanted to. It's like, man, maybe I just keep it. Because that's the thing, though. Is like I could secretly just start the podcast and just be doing it and just not call it that, so that way people don't have an expectation of it. But then I just start doing these like 40-minute discussions with people when I can get around to it. That's probably the best you're gonna get out of me. Maybe at some point I'll actually have a proper organized podcast, but for now we're not gonna put that label on it. But hey, if y'all keep popping out showing the support for these videos, I really enjoyed the last one and I really enjoyed making this one as well, maybe that'll be something I'll look into. But with that, I think I will go ahead and wrap things up for now, even though I can easily sit here and talk for probably another 40 minutes and rap with you. But yeah, man, I think the long and short of it basically is DBFZ has done a lot of good for a lot of people, and there's a lot of other games and player bases out there that would kill to have what we have. So even though we have our frustrations with the game, things could definitely be a lot worse, and we should always take a look back and remind ourselves to be grateful as we look around and see the other communities that are out there and be like, DBFZ really has a beautiful thing going with it, and it has gotten a lot of support both from players and the developers. So thank you, MajinObama, for joining me here today. You have any closing remarks or sentiments?
Nah, man, thanks for hitting me up. And look, shit, everybody, y'all keep at it, man. if y'all want to see more stuff like this from Lotus, I like hearing it because I like hearing basically the perspective of people who are getting into, maybe they have a history with it, like Lotus is saying, but they still consider themselves kind of fresh. I like hearing that other perspective. I'm somebody who likes to hear, if let's say we don't necessarily agree on something, we can still chop it up you know, for sure.
Nah, for sure. And I'm the same way. Cause like, again, we had two different perspectives. It's not like we had a falling out or anything like that, but it's like, I'm more than willing to come. I guess we actually agree on a lot, but I still feel like
we actually do agree. It's just like, it's from, those lines intersect from different angles, you know, that.
Nah, for sure.
And it's just, I mean, the only thing I got to say, man, is y'all just keep put your money where your mouth is. Support it. If you like the stuff that Lotus is putting out, keep supporting it. And then also, if you play DBFZ, if you like the game, keep playing the game. If you like the game, keep playing the game.
Yeah, and everyone saw that. Everyone saw that tweet I made and was like, "Oh, he'll be back. He'll be back." I'm like, "Yeah, of course I'm gonna be back. Let me get my salts out. Let me take my little break. I'll be back on the game eventually."
Bro, you have mental illness, dude. Like,
bro. Like so sometimes you just need a break, bro. Sometimes you just need a break.
But also, what I really want to encourage, especially people who maybe DBFZ is their first fighting game, pick something else up on the side. You don't necessarily have to go hard in it. You don't have to get super serious about it. But if there's a game out there that you think looks cool, you know, another fighting game, that's what I'm saying. Basically, if you think it looks cool, actually just try to pick it up just to mess around with it. You might gain an appreciation for it and watch it a little bit more. But then what that'll also help you do is you gain better perspective as a player about like maybe different skill sets that maybe Dragon Ball uses but doesn't really put under a magnifying glass.
Nah, for sure.
But the other thing too is as a like community member too, you might become a little bit more familiar with, oh man, this game has this stuff really going for it, but it struggles in this area.
Right.
Whereas damn, Dragon Ball, holy shit, man, we got this and this, but you know, this part's a little bit frustrating, but damn, overall, like to say that this game is like, you know, 5 years old, like damn, it's not that bad, you know, like those kinds of perspectives and opening yourself up to that stuff like that is it's valuable. That's all I want to say.
Nah, and I agree. I definitely agree. I appreciate y'all for watching the video up to this point. For those of you who stuck around all the way, you definitely a trooper. It definitely means a lot. For those of you who hit the like button, I appreciate y'all as well. But hit this one if you didn't already. Subscribe if you haven't already, so you can stay tuned for all this content I'm bringing you. With all that being said, friends, after that, remember, nothing can happen until you swing the bat.
And happy holidays, Lotus, to you and yours and everybody watching and coming through.
Back at you, homie.